What is up guys, Morton here from SteamFirst.com with a review for Kill Fun Yeah, a 2D platform shooter developed by Arctic Anteater and released May 30th, 2014 on Steam for $10. This game is really hard to review, not because it's amazingly good or terribly bad, but because it's more or less unplayable. Now I realize that's a pretty bold statement, so let me explain what I mean. First off, Kill Fun Yeah is a multiplayer only game. There is no single player campaign or even bots to play against. You can probably guess where I'm going with this, but literally nobody plays this game, which means that you can't either because you'll have no one to play with. As you can see from the video, there's one player currently online, which is me, and if you're wondering why the video is just of me running around doing nothing, that's because that's the only thing you can do since nobody else is ever playing. I've tried at all times of day, from 7 PM Eastern to 5 AM Eastern. Basically that's peak hours for every country, and yet nobody ever got on to play against. So keep that in mind while I talk about the game itself. Everything I'm saying here is based off a bit I played against a friend of mine, because I wanted to at least play the game for real against somebody so I had things to talk about. The gameplay is actually pretty interesting. There were 3 game types: Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, and Free-for-all. Only one I tried was the Deathmatch type since it was 1v1, but it worked well enough. The platforming worked fairly well and the movement was pretty good. The controls were really not at all intuitive, but they weren't terrible, and after a little while I got used to them. As for the actual fighting part, you can pick up a variety of guns, some of which are really interesting and unique, and then you just try to kill the other person while they're jumping around and climbing on stuff and falling very quickly, and you're jumping around and climbing on stuff and falling very quickly. And it's pretty chaotic, it's really fast paced, and it's pretty interesting. At least it would be if there were more than 2 of us. All in all, the gameplay wasn't bad, it's just incredibly hard to judge what's supposed to be an action-packed game when you only have 2 people playing it. Gameplay gets a 3.5 out of 5, potentially anyway. It seems like it could be good with enough people. Alright, now let's talk about things I can actually formulate a legitimate opinions on. Visually the game looks okay, but it's nothing spectacular. It's about par for the course with indie games. There's actually a bit of variety in the levels, and the guns all look cool and have really cool looking attacks. Overall, the game does look pretty nice. Graphics get a 4 out of 5. The audio, on the other hand, is pretty lacking. The music is really repetitive, and all the weapons sound pretty ridiculous. Granted, the entire game is pretty ridiculous, so I guess that fits, but it's still not all that great. Sound gets a 2.5 out of 5. Now that's not to say it sounds awful, but it's just average at best. As for replayability, I mean there's obviously infinite replayability if there are people to play against since it's multiplayer only. If there aren't, then there's no gameplay to begin with. I guess replayability is somewhere between a 0 and a 5. If there's actually a lot of people to play with, then you can play forever and probably have some fun with it. But since I haven't seen a single other user logged on in over 2 weeks, I'm going to stick with a 0 on the replayability front. Overall, this game is just massively disappointing. It does seem like it could be fun, but it's supposed to be played with 16 people, and I'm not totally convinced that 16 different people bought the game. They do offer a 4-pack for $30, so basically buy 3 get 1 free, and if you have friends to play with, you could have some fun with it, but again, unless you have 16 friends and over $100 to throw at it, you probably won't even have a full lobby. And I can't imagine too many people fall in that category. Kill Fun Yeah gets a 1 out of 5, and the only reason it gets that is because it functions and could be playable if there were people to play with. But unfortunately that never seems to be the case.